what's up you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is just a get ready with me story time about my experience working with the Walt Disney World Company. So if you want to see how I got this very simple, I'm off work, don't need to glam today look, and you want to hear about my experience working with Disney, just keep on watching. Okay, so I'm not really going to describe like all of the products that I'm using today. This is more just a get ready with me story time. But if you have any questions about what I'm using, most of them I have already referenced in another video. So feel free to check those out. But yeah, let's get going. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is a story time about when I worked for the Walt Disney World Company. In Orlando, Florida. I worked for the Walt Disney World Company for 2 years in total, but this is going to be about when I lived in Orlando and worked there full time. So I got into the Walt Disney World Company by doing their college internship program, and I knew that I wanted to do the Disney college program like since I was probably 16 years old, and I always planned on applying. And then right as I got old enough, they changed the requirements that you had to, you couldn't just like graduate high school and go. You had to at least attend a school, a college or a university for at least 1 semester, and then you could apply. So I was like, well, looks like I gotta go to college. So no, I mean, I always plan on going to school, but so I went to school for literally 1 semester, and I had looked up just kind of for fun like how the process went. I obviously thought like there's no way I'm gonna get in the first time, so I'll just like try it out and see what happens. So applications opened up and I applied, and it's like a online questionnaire. So like I applied and then they emailed me like I think it was like 50 questions if I remember correctly, just kind of like situational questions. So it would be like if a guest was upset about not getting reservations at a restaurant, like what would you do? And it was like 4 answers. So it's kind of just like best choice, right? Whoa. And so I went through that, obviously just did the best that a girl could, having no clue what I was doing. And I passed. Now, let me also tell you, this happened in the span of like 35 minutes. So I passed. The second they emailed it to me, I took it. And then I got an email like almost immediately that said like, congratulations, you passed, here's another one. I was like, okay. So I take another one that was essentially like the same thing but harder. And I was like, oh god. And like if I remember correctly, you're timed, like you only have a certain amount of time to answer the questions. And so, oh sorry, that was my email. And so you only have a certain amount of time to answer the questions, and I did that. Mind you, I'm doing all of this inside my sorority house. Like it's not that I wasn't taking it seriously, but I like didn't even know what to expect. And right after that, I got an email that said, we'd like to do a phone interview. And I was like, oh, I didn't even tell my mom about this. Like no one knew I was doing this, because I literally was just thinking, my background is acting, so it's kind of like auditioning, right? Like you need to audition a couple times before you maybe get casted, because you need to see like how the audition flows, really what to prepare. Like that's kind of what my mindset was like, okay, I'll apply, see what it's like, probably not get in, and then I'll apply next time and have everything prepared and get in. Well, it happened the first time. So I scheduled a phone interview. Still haven't told anyone. My mother doesn't know, nobody knows that I'm doing this. Schedule a phone interview, and it was for like a few days later. And it was like, be in a quiet space, and I was like, oh god, I live in a sorority house, like quiet space. So I basically told the girls that lived on my floor that I was having a very important phone call and I needed them to like not be home at this time, or if they were home to be like really, really quiet. And they totally got it. They were super respectful. So the time came and I get the phone call, and of course they're like so nice and they're asking me questions, and at this point I can't really remember, but when you apply you select the jobs that you'd be interested in, right? Like character, this, that, attractions, like rides. And so based on the jobs that I selected as what I would like, they were asking me questions like within that field. And one of the things, because like I said, my background's acting, I had done a lot of like little girl birthday parties before. And so I was telling them that. I was like, yeah, I have a lot of experience with children. I'm actually do birthday parties for little girls. And it's super fun, blah, 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 blah. So I answered a bunch of questions that now, of course, I don't remember because it's been like 6 years. And and then they were just like, okay, great, have a magical day. And I was like, you too, see ya. Obviously, like, they were just like, you should expect something back within like 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, 2 weeks, you know, I'll just wait until then. Check my email. That's what they said. They were like, check your email in 2 weeks. We have to do like the rest of the phone interviews, but this is the final interview. I was like, what? Like, I had no idea it was even the final interview. Like, when I tell you that I did this completely blind, I literally had no, sorry. I literally had no clue what I was doing. Like, I had no idea what the process was. So then I was like, oh, 2 weeks and then I'll know if I got it. Like, okay, great. So I was driving home. I was in Atlanta. Well, I lived in Atlanta, so that's not a surprise, but I forget where I was. But I was driving and I was in some traffic. And so I was like, oh, let me just check my email. It had only been like 2 days, literally 2 days, but I'm a little obsessive. So I was like, let me just check my email and see what's going on. Oh, it's like it gets, I'm not gonna cry, like, not like that, but it just gets me like so emotional, like so like, oh. So I see an email that says the Walt Disney World Company, and they do it where you like can't read. There's no like email preview. So it just, I clicked it and it was like, welcome to the family. And I was like, oh my God. And I pulled over because I was in traffic, but I pulled off the road and I'm like sobbing. Like, I was in total shock, sobbing, and I was like, I have to tell my mom, like, oh my God. So I call my mom. Mind you, my mom has no idea I applied. Like, she has no clue what's going on. So I call my mom and I'm like, Mom, I applied to work in Disney World in Orlando, Florida as part of a college internship program. Now, she knew I'd always wanted to do it, so she knew what the program was, but she had no idea that I applied. And I was like, Mom, I applied like 3 weeks ago. I had two interviews and then a phone interview. And I was like, Mom, I got it. I just got the email. And so she's like, what? Like freaking out. And obviously then the reality sets in that like I'm moving to Orlando, Florida. Mind you, I was 18. Like, I was such a baby. Looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did that at 18. Like, wow. And so anyways, my mom and I are like, I'm sobbing, she's crying, like we're all happy, right? So I'm like, you know, fast forward. I think I got accepted in like October, or like, I can't remember what month I got accepted. I have the email. Like I took a screenshot of the email and I've literally never deleted it. I'll never delete it for the rest of my life. And then, so fast forward, I moved to Orlando in January, and that I actually turned 19 like the week after I moved there. So I moved there, I think it was January 12th, if I remember correctly, was the day that I moved in. And I say move in because I lived on Disney property. Like, I literally lived in Disney housing. And so we drove to Orlando, stayed in a hotel, and I can spare like the details of the Disney College program for another video if there's people that are interested in knowing like kind of the way that it worked. Obviously it's been many years, so it's different, but all that to say, you had to be there at 3 a.m. at the housing complex to like basically fight for housing, essentially like where you wanted to live. So that's what I did. Met my best friend of my entire life there. Oh God, okay, I could go, this video is gonna be too long if I like don't shut up. So I got placed at the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique inside Cinderella's Castle, and that was my primary role at Disney World. That is where I spent almost all my days, and basically that was doing princess transformations on little girls, hair, makeup, nails, and I was a fairy. So that was such a good time. I got certified in hairstyling in the state of California to do that job. It was like part of Disney's onboarding. They like hauled us off to this like cosmetology school to get certified. And it was incredible. So I did my internship program. Originally there was 2 options, like a 4-month and then like a, God, was it a 9-month or a 7-month or something? And I got the long program. I was not expecting to get the long program. I believe I applied for the, I said either on the application to improve my chances of getting accepted, saying like I was down to do either program. And I was like, at the beginning when I got accepted, I was really freaked out that I got the long one because I had been dating, I had like a long-term boyfriend in high school and into college, and at this point we were still together. And so I remember I hadn't told him. I had told him that I got accepted, and then I posted a picture on like Twitter or Facebook or something, because Instagram was like kind of a thing but not really, and it showed that I got the long program. And I remember him calling me and being like, "You're leaving for that many months? I thought you asked for the short one." And I was like, well, like I'm definitely not backing out, like. So anyways, he was really supportive about it, which was really sweet. So I did do the long one. We ended up breaking up in the middle. That's a whole other thing. Great guy, love him to death. So I worked full-time, obviously, and a couple of the craziest things about working for Disney, in my case at least, was I worked in a specialty area, and so we got a lot of like, well, obviously Disney has like a lot of celebrities, duh, that's not like a surprise. And then there's people at Disney that are like media trained. So like you go through this course where like if a celebrity was to like bring their child in or something to the boutique, there's only certain people that can like touch them or talk to them, because you have to be like media trained. That way you're not making like an idiot of yourself. And you can't like acknowledge that they're famous. Obviously, like you just have to completely treat them as normal. Like, so there's a lot of that with Disney. And then I'm trying to think about like what I want to tell you guys about my experience. Like I said, I can spare all the stories for later, but it's just one of those things that like in the politest of ways, Disney kind of reminds you that you are disposable. Like, I remember one of my managers said, like, there's a 2-year waiting list for your job. Like, not to me, but like to us. Like, there's a 2-year waiting list for my job. Meaning, if you mess up, beep in 45 seconds, like they're about to make someone's dream come true and hire them and like moving on, right? And I really hated that. Like, it was a lot of stress, like at 18, to think that, you know, oh my God, if you mess up one time, like it's all over. But now that I've worked for other companies and seen like the buffoonery that is allowed and like the lack of like integrity and accountability and stuff for people, I can so appreciate like how strict Disney was. And it's the best in the world. Like you don't get the title like best in the world by being mediocre or like allowing your people to be mediocre. And so you are held to like an insanely high standard. And you know, you can get written up. It's obviously like attendance, like regular companies, blah 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 blah. So couple of the cool things that I know, look at me using the tiny mirror. A couple of the cool things that I know people always want to ask, like, or want to know, like fun facts and stuff about the program. I was paid like a regular employee. It was not a free internship. So yes, I was paid. And in my specialty area, I was also allowed to accept tips. I was the only job in the entire Disney company that could accept tips outside of restaurants. So I also got tipped out at the end of the week. Obviously, it's like going to see a hairdresser, right? People would tip us like for our service. But because I lived on Disney property, like we did pay rent. So my rent was just taken out of my paycheck every month because obviously Disney paid me, Disney housed me. So every month I would just see on my pay stub like living or rent or something like that, housing. And so I believe, and I cannot remember now what I was hired at, like what my rate was, but I believe that like bi-weekly or weekly, my paychecks after everything were like $140. Like I was poor. Everyone was though. Like everyone that was an intern, like we were just poor because I'm pretty sure we worked at minimum wage. Now granted, my tips were cash, so that was nice. But yeah, my actual pay stubs were like nothing. So yeah, you just kind of like lived to work, kind of like I do in California now. But it was like still the best time of my life. And the funnest parts were like, you would get off work and like meet up with your friend or like your roommate, in my case like my best friend Kelly, and we'd be like, do you want to just like ride Space Mountain before we go home? Like we're like, yeah, sure. Change, like we'd just change out of our uniforms and like go up through the tunnels and pop ourselves out by Space Mountain and get on the single rider line, ride it like 2 times and be like, oh, that was fun, okay, you want to catch the bus home? And then we'd like go home. So Disney also had a bus system for us. And so like they took you to work, they picked you up from work, etc, etc. So that was nice too. I did take my car down there only because I don't like to not have a car. Like I'll never not have a car. I like the freedom of having a car. So I drove my car from Atlanta to Orlando to have it there with me, which, oh sorry, which was obviously a great decision because it allowed us to like, I don't know, go grocery shopping. So yeah. I would say the craziest thing about working for Disney that I did not really anticipate was the sheer amount of like, you do not acknowledge the real world while you're there as an employee. As long as, so I was technically like in character, like as a fairy. I could not acknowledge the real world. I lived in Fantasyland. I lived in Cinderella's castle. Like, you don't know what America is. You don't know what president is currently in office. Like, you don't know any of that because that's not real. This is real. Fantasyland is real. And so sticking to that tagline at all times was like so, not even hard, but the story that I always tell people was I worked the day of the Boston bombing, and I was working on stage on the floor. I was currently working, and I went to take a break, and this sounds crazy, like I went up into the castle to take my break, and there's a TV inside the break room inside the castle, and I saw on the television, it was on the news, and the Boston bombing had just happened. I mean, it was like actively happening. And of course, everyone in the break room were like freaking out, like, oh my God, what's happening? You know, we don't know if it's terrorist attack. Like, no one knew what was going on. And I was only on a 15-minute break. So right when my break was over, I had to go back downstairs and get working. Like, there was no break. Like, there was no staying upstairs to like figure out if there's like an active terrorist attack happening in the world. And so that was insane, and I will never forget, I was working with a family and the mom's on her cell phone, and she looks up, looks at her husband, looks at me, and in just pure fear is like, the Boston bombing, like the Boston Marathon was just bombed. And her husband, of course, is like, oh my God. And she looks at me, and because I did not even budge. I didn't even acknowledge it, like her comment. And she looked at me and said it again, like, the Boston Marathon was just bombed. I literally had to look this lady in the eye and go, where is Boston? Like, I've never heard of such a place. And she's looking at me like, what? And I'm like, like, of course, I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, it was so crazy. And like, that was all the time. Like people would ask you like, how old are you? Like, people would try to get you to break character all the time. And I'm like, oh, I'm 221. Like, I don't age, you know? And they're like, what? Like, it was stupid, but it was funny at the same time. Like, people do like that when you stay in character, I guess, but it was wild. Like, I just remember always being like, oh my God, like, I literally can't acknowledge this right now. It just, that was always interesting. So basically, long story short, and I can make this a series if everyone likes this, but I had the most incredible experience doing my Disney internship, and I ended up carrying that on for like another year after I left full-time. I was a recruiter for their Disney College program in Atlanta on college campuses, which is no longer a program, I believe, but I was able to continue my employment and work, essentially work a few times in the park and then recruit for them, but I kept my Disney perks. So like, I would take my friends down there and like, oh my God, it was so fun. You know, because I would just go down and play because I worked all my hours like in Atlanta recruiting. And so I had the time of my life. So that's how I ended up working for them for 2 years, because I basically worked for them for a year full-time in Orlando and then a year afterwards in Atlanta recruiting. I would help out. Really, really fun. 2 times I got to help with the Disney auditions in Atlanta for characters. And that was like such a fun time. If you ever want a video on Disney character auditions, if I don't get sued, I would love to fill everybody in on that. But yeah, so it was such a good time. It literally shaped like who I am as a person today. I'm not even gonna lie, they work you hard. Like, they work you really, really hard. And we had some rough days. There was a time that I called my parents and I told them to come to Orlando immediately because I was leaving and I needed their help to pack up. Like, I was not playing around. I was like, I'm leaving, and if you don't come get me, I'll see you in Atlanta. Like, I'll drive by myself. Like, so yeah, we, you know, they work you hard. And at 18, I'd never really been like worked that hard in my life. But like I said, it definitely shaped like who I am today. My experience, it's such an incredible memory. Met my best friend in the entire world. Met many people, many friends from all over the world that I still keep in contact with, that just, it was just the best time of my entire life. And like I said, this video is already way too long. I could keep going. I could go into detail about a lot of things. Fun facts about Disney, things you see, things you probably don't know as a park guest. But yeah, so maybe we make that the next series, but I am going to finish getting ready. I'm going to do my eyeliner, which that is another video that's coming up very soon, how to eyeliner. But yeah, so I hope I gave you a fun little story time about when I worked for Disney. I will definitely keep this going if you guys like this, if it's something that you want to know about. But thank you so much for watching. Let me finish getting ready. I'm off today. I have a lot of things I need to do. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back next week. Bye.